Hi, Megan. Thank you so much
Hello.
for being here. So as you know, May 10th is Mother's Day in New Zealand. And I thought, why do we only get one day? Like, why not the whole month of May to be Mother's Month? And I thought of this great idea of interviewing inspiring and empowering moms like you. So, Megan Anderson, you're a psychologist, but you're also the owner of Tuti, which sells beautiful New Zealand design cloth nappies, as well as swim nappies. These are all fine, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah.
And other accessories that are really cool. So this is your wet bag, which I use all the time.
Same.
And my kids also just use the swim nappies. They've actually never used disposable swim nappies. We've always just used these because you gave them to us, and they work really well. And they're super cute. And I always get lots of comments from people and asking me where I get them from. And of course, I direct them to your website. So I should get some commission.
You should. Thank you.
Yeah. But the reason why I'm interviewing you is because you've been such a supportive friend. I think you're the second person I talked to when I started thinking about starting my business. So the first person was Penny, and the second person was you. And I think I remembered this conversation. We were at your place, and I was talking about motherhood. And I think the great thing about our friendship is that we can talk about motherhood, the bad. Well, let's start with the good first. The good, the bad, and the ugly. But we tend to talk about the bad as well. But I think that's what I love about you. You're so honest and real, and I can just kind of talk about my day and how hard it is. And like totally get it because you also have two kids. You had two kids under two, didn't you? You had So you have Lily, who is 2.5, and then you have Zachy, who just turned 10 months, right?
Yeah.
And you started Tuti when were you pregnant, or you just had Lily?
So I remember I had Lily when I started the research and the development and whatnot, because although we started Tuti after having Lily, it had been an interest area. So I'm 35, and when I was 17 and 18, 19, 20, going through university, I worked in daycares part-time and as a relief teacher, and that was a great experience for going on to be a psychologist amongst other jobs that I did. But that's where I saw the disposables on a slightly larger scale, and I just thought, how can people not recognize this? And so I mean, that was years ago, but whenever I met people then, like through life and product development and stuff, I'd be like, is anyone doing this, and what's going on? And then when we had Lily, we couldn't find the right product. There just wasn't any love in what was out there, and we didn't want to go overseas, so it just happened from there. So people would think that we got into it because we had kids, which is right. We wanted something stylish and sustainable and with a lot of love in it. However, the backstory is, like, 17 years ago, I'd already been kind of thinking a lot about this. So then, like, that just took me on this like journey that I was compelled to go on, and Mark was like there with me as well. And I really remember when Lily was about 3 months, so I was doing heaps of kind of messaging, and we were starting with the samples and whatnot. And also at that time, I was loving being a mother, and it was a huge transition and whatnot, but I think it was a big adjustment not doing something intellectual, and I love reading, and like our job as psychologists is hugely intellectual.
It's all brain.
So I think it was part of my adjustment as well, in terms of being a mother, but also continuing to feed my brain and making the transition. And maybe I struggled a little in that respect, and that was an outlet, but that's when it started, and then it took like towards the end of the year to actually get a business started.
I still remember, I think you told me the first time, like, we had coffee at one of the cafes in Birkenhead, and you were telling me that you were starting this e-commerce and selling cloth nappies, and I was like, wow, like, how did you do that? Like, I'm just really curious to hear like the creative process of starting Tuti. especially when you have like a 3-month-old baby, like how did you manage to kind of start that and grow Tuti as a brand and as a business?
I think a lot of people have a dream of a business or a side hustle. Maybe I just see a lot of that online and out there, you know, and mothers have to, in some respect. I don't think modern society feels that accommodating in some ways, time-wise, and lack of resource and family support. And so perhaps there's a dream of doing something that makes everything fit nicely together.
Yeah.
I have to say, like, I'm not that dream. Like, this just was a combination of things that I've just been interested in, like photography, and I've always just appreciated fashion, been really interested in it. And as I said, the nappies thing was from the past, and this was a product problem for us, like we couldn't find the product. And then I just, like, back at school and stuff, I'd always done art and design, but I was kind of funneled into, where do you get jobs? You got to study science, you got to do this. And I had to leave all of that behind. And I guess, like many, I had a fantasy of changing career and whatnot. And I just thought, oh my God, I can't go back to university. Like, after you train for so long for your career, it just feels frightening. And when you have the responsibility of a family, it's a huge financial burden. And then I thought, why have I got into this, I have to go and train mindset? And then it all just came together in terms of wanting a creative outlet, and it was creative. And I think also in terms of people's professions, we get so narrow-minded, but the skills that we have are so incredible to utilize in a whole bunch of other ways. So it was like chaos, really. It's not an ordered process. It was funneled chaos. An
organic kind of growing of being.
Yeah.
And how do you think your background in psychology helped you for this phase of life of having Tuti?
You know, I feel so grateful all the time to have had the work experience and the training, because I just think there's so much clatter, clanging noise out there in terms of parenting, and that there's so many expectations. The expectations just seem bonkers to me. And I think also well-meaning people have really great angles, but they're taking an angle, not a context and a big picture. And so I feel so grateful to have all of that, so I can feel joy and security with what I'm doing. And I read some fantastic books, you know, by psychologists, clinical psychologists, psychiatrists, and I just want everyone to have all of that. But at the same time, I feel really sad that we're sleep deprived, busy, lacking intellectual resource, and that people can't, it's not a good time to take on that information. So that's why I love people like yourself that are just delivering it in ways where it can be just taken, like, it with life as the way it is now.
And so your background in psychology really helped you to kind of distill those messages.
Hugely. Like it helps me just enormously. And I think we take for granted what we know, but in a lot of ways.
And you talked about expectations. Do you feel like there were certain or are certain expectations people place on you as a mom?
Oh my God. Like, I feel like I've just stepped into, you know, the most important job in the world. And, you know, with great responsibility comes great expectations.
Yes.
And as I said, I think there's a certain time and place and that we're in now, which seems to be even more so like just what people should be doing. And I have to say, even now, like all the stuff on social media, like we're in lockdown, I'm doing this with my kid, I'm doing that with my kid, I'm doing that. And I think it's like virtue signaling, like I'm a good parent because I'm doing all of this stuff. And I've always been so content in myself in my life. However, as a parent, it's been the most that I've ever questioned myself, and the most that I've ever said to myself, I should do this. You know, like talk about shoulding as psychologists. never really did that. I was
Yep.
always quite happy with what I was doing. However, as a parent, it's like, should be doing this, should be doing that. And that's been a huge adjustment for me.
So what would you say to a mom, let's say, who thinks that she should always just, have cloth nappies for her baby? Like, 'cause there seems to be, like the message on this one end where you're supposed to always just do cloth nappies all the time rather than disposable. Disposable's bad, like what would you say to those moms?
Oh, and this is like, I love that you use cloth nappies because that was a huge thing for Tuti. Like, just do what you want. Like, honestly, you do you. And Winnicott has a great saying, that your gut and your intuition with the mother and particularly the baby is everything. And first of all, as much as possible, don't question it and, take on information, but try to protect that space because it's really important. So don't put those extra expectations on yourself and just do what you can do. Like, honestly, I've always said, and I truly believe, even if you use one cloth nappy, that's it. Like, if you want to do that and you can do that, that's great. And the chances are you might get hooked into a couple more. But I just think maybe I set really low expectations so then I don't disappoint myself or for other people. I just think, I guess what makes me so sad is I think people are really mean on themselves. They don't cut themselves a break. Like, working out after having a baby and this, like, doing everything and all that, I'm just like, you're being so tough on yourself. And I get caught up in that, like 100. I wish this or I wish that or I should be doing this or I'm so tired. But so I just I don't really see many alternative messages to that.
Well, I think that's just why I'm so passionate about starting that conversation about kind of real motherhood, right? Being open and honest to each other about all the emotions that we experience through this journey of motherhood. It also includes all the kind of what we termed negative, even though they're not really negative, but like anger and frustration and sadness. That's just the human experience. And when you go through a massive change, like having a baby for the first time or your second child or whatever, that's a massive adjustment. And I think people go through the grief process. I certainly did. I felt like I went through this grief process where, you go through the 5 stages of, there's like denial. I think I was in that stage for a while when I was pregnant because we weren't expecting to have twins. Then twins were born. We're like, I think I was so deprived. I was not even in this like same plane on earth. And I went through anger because I felt like there was such a push and pull between their needs and my needs, and I get really upset when I can't even do something like as basic as going to the bathroom, like biological need, and I get really angry. But then when I noticed I was feeling angry, I was really hard on myself. I was like, why am I feeling angry? Like, I shouldn't be feeling angry to my babies, and like people want to have kids, and why am I feeling angry? And it's and I think that's why I was finding motherhood really hard, was because I was questioning myself and I wasn't allowing me to experience that emotion and thinking that it's normal, right? Like, it's normal for us to feel anger when we can't go to the bathroom or when we are hungry and sleep deprived, right? And then there's the, that next stage of depression, right? Of just kind of feeling quite sad for the loss of things like, our freedom to do whatever we want to do, our identity as someone that's not a mom. For a long time, I think people always look at the pram and not really even see me, right, as a person, and they recognize me as, you're the mom with twins. It's like, I do have a name.
You've lost your name.
I've lost my name. Like, I've lost my name. I've lost like I did training for 10 years as a psychologist, and that's all gone out the window. Right?
You're invisible.
Like, exactly. Did you feel that way too when you had Lily?
Oh my gosh, so much. So not so much with Lily, but having Zach really threw worlds upside down. But I vividly remember with Lily, like being at a group, and this was quite funny. It was like a group in, I don't know, one of those like play mothers and babies.
Yeah.
And the facilitator said, you know, about being with your baby and being with their feelings and how you don't want to pressure them, and it was like a nice parenting talk. And she said, now, where are those people that were top of the class? You know, how are they doing now? You know, they're not going so well because they'd be pressured. And someone in the group said, I'm here. Like, I was top of the class. And it was bang on, because it was like, you can't be a mother and have also been as something else, you know, like a studious, top grade earner student. Like, these things are so compartmentalized. You can't be all of that, and you certainly lose parts of yourself. So, you know, especially with having 2 kids, I like, you lock me in a bubble by myself and I'll be fine for years. I love to read, I like to draw, I like to follow magazines, I could keep myself entertained for days. Like, I love time to myself, and that's been lost, and that was really hard. But also when Zach was little, the same as you, I mean, he was colicky, so he was really demanding, as well as having Lily. And I remember just having all those feelings, and you know, you'd think, am I depressed, because that's the lexicon? But I was like, no, I'm just going to sit with this, and I'm going to feel my body. And I vividly remember being on the couch, and I had a feeling in my chest, and I had feelings down my arms, and I'm like, I'm going to tune in to what this is. And I came up with anguish, despair. I was feeling resentment, fear, anxiety, loss, and I began to rattle off like 20 different things that I had felt in that day. And I did it in the shower. I was like, I'm going to actually think through the day and everything that I've felt. And I was like, this helps me understand why I feel I'm in such a spin. And it's because I'm having a heap of emotions. And I told somebody this, and they're like, are you okay? I don't feel bad. And I was like, I'm so happy to put words to them, and I'm getting in touch with what the hell is going on, because I feel like I've been tipped on my head. And I was the same as you. I'd get so resentful at Mark for going to the toilet. I would be like, how can you go to the toilet? And it sounds bonkers, but the resentment, I was like, and in some parts I felt like, what, I've been stitched up. I was basically in a man's world until I had kids, and then my world's blown up, and it's huge.
Do you feel like when you do say those things, like you're being honest and open to someone, they're worried about, you know, maybe you're having postnatal depression, or is it hormonal, but you know, like, do you think that they attribute it to those things, whereas it's just a normal human experience when you've gone through massive changes?
I don't know, to be honest. I'm still working that out, and I'd be interested on like what you think and other people think, because, you know, I've stood in my kitchen so many times and I'm like, oh my God, this is so hard. Like, and I'm like, now, of course, I'm going to help myself in any way possible, because the chips are stacked against me. Like, I've got these 2 little kids. Mark works 2 hours, 12 hours, you know, 6 to 6. I've got
2 hours.
I've got, you know, limited childcare. I've got no babysitters and no family. Like, why would I be hard on myself? Like, why wouldn't I take anything possible? Why wouldn't I say I feel low? You know, it's I don't know if it's still that stigma or that loosening, but I guess we're used to doing assessments, and I look at my own assessment, I'm like, oh my God, all the odds are stacked so far out of my favor right now. I mean, like, and look at me sitting here. This morning I woke up, and it was one of the days I was so sleep deprived. I haven't had, you know, more than 3 hours in a row for 2 days. I got up, I couldn't function. I sat on the couch. Mark made me coffee. I cried. He left. I was like, oh my God, I just can't do it. I can't do it. And he's like, yeah, you look like you want to throw yourself through the window. I was like, you read my mind. But, and that's not every day, but I get these days where I'm so tired once every few months. And it's just the way it is. But you wouldn't know that, me sitting here right now. That's why I say it. Like, I'm better in the night and this looks nice. But this morning was not good.
Yeah. So that's why I appreciate it way more now that you're here with me at 8:00 at night after 2 broken sleeps.
I'm better in the night. I don't know if are you a morning person?
I'm definitely a morning person, yeah. But I think I'm becoming more of a night person out of necessity.
No, I'm a massive night person.
Are you? Yeah, you look like you're just gonna go out and party, but you can't because it's locked down. So.
Yeah.
So Mother's Day is coming up. So what do you think you would say to your mom on Mother's Day?
Oh, just thank you. You know, it's one of those things, it's almost beyond words, and it sounds seriously cliche, but thank you, you know, because it's just not doing anything, you know, it's not perfect, it's just doing the best that everybody can, and it's a big job. So, you know, just an appreciation, and not so much words, but the heartfelt back to the thank you.
Yeah. And do you think that has changed since you become a mother? You realize kind of, you know, the depth of gratitude as well?
Yeah, you just don't know. And again, I think even having one kid, like, until you live it, like, I mean, I got it with one kid, but yeah, with having two and having the lack of keeping it together and the resource and the time and whatnot, and you just think of all those moments where with my siblings we're like, oh, why is mum such a bitch, like, oh my God, and then like suddenly you
realize that she was just doing the best that she could with the time and energy that she had.
Oh yeah, and that there's just so much to do that you just can't put words to. Yeah.
And you talked about kind of contextualizing your life, right? Because like when you're questioning, like, why am I finding it so hard? And then you're able to reflect, actually, the chips are stacked against me, right? I don't have family in, you know, the same town. There's no childcare, husband working 12 hours a week. And you can kind of reflect on, why am I being so hard on myself? And I think that's, you know, that's a great kind of ability, right? Like, I don't think a lot of people question that, right? Sometimes they just beat themselves up so much. And I think it takes, you know, like other people to kind of contextualize it and be like, wait, Megan, like, why are you finding, you know, like, of course you're finding it so hard. Like, you're doing so much. And what other strategies do you think you use when you're, you know, having those hard moments? Like when you're kind of questioning yourself, like, why am I finding this so hard? Like, why is being a mom so hard? what other strategies do you have during those times?
I think like a lot of people talk about what they learn as they go along with parenting, everything's just a phase, and you have one struggle but you go on to the next, or things get easier or whatnot. You're like unhinging from that, you know, that it's going to be difficult forever. And I guess I just use that a lot with myself, you know, like I don't have time to myself at the moment, and, you know, I'm not physically in the right shape, but I'm like, this is a phase of my life where that's not a priority. And guess what? In 6 months' time, I might change with that. Like, just being terribly gentle on myself, like, it's a phase, like, I'm going to, you know, not have my ducks in a row in this area or this area or this area at this time, and that's all right, because it just causes too much tension, I find, for me, if I'm trying to do everything I want to do at one time. Like, I just have to space things out in the bigger picture. And I also think being, I guess, naturally quite existential, like, at the end of your life, what's the point, you know, like, which is more philosophical, but it is a coping strategy, you know, and it does let me ditch the dishes. And I'm like, actually, this can be a bomb for 2 days. Like, who cares? Like, let it go. And kind of playing by my own rules a little bit. But I do fear judgment with that in some respects, because, you know, there are certain things that I feel that you should be doing. But also having mantras like I would when I was exercising and struggling, you know, it feels quite avoidant emotionally, but when you're really struggling and you've got to keep going, I tell myself, you've just got to keep going. Like, you've just got to get through this bit, particularly with the sleep deprivation. And like little mantras, and just like a wider meaning, like nothing worthwhile is easy. I think, you know, with our social media and with life, like we're in such an opportunity, like kind of space, you can do anything and you can be everything, and there's so much out there for the taking, and things look easy, but just coming back to that things are not easy, and worthwhile things are often not easy. And I think that just helps me have a lot of acceptance.
Right.
Yeah.
Acceptance is definitely key, I think, especially when there are a lot of things that you cannot control, right? And I find that with, I guess the other hard part of being a mother is that losing control, right? Like, because before we had kids, we could just plan our day, like go to work on time. Like when we schedule a catch up, it will happen unless you're sick, you know? But then suddenly we have kids, and you could plan your day, and then you've got, you know, Lily's sick, and so she can't go to daycare, and then suddenly you have to juggle everything, right?
It is so hard letting go of my picture of the day and all the things that can be done, and when a bomb drops on that, that's hard. I don't know, I don't know about that. I'm learning.
What's the one thing, surprising thing that you've learned about yourself since you've become a mom?
To be honest, I can't think of anything surprising, but I have met parts of myself that I don't like, and are certainly my worst traits, which include, can be really impatient when things are not going, like terribly impatient on my schedule. There's probably things to do with Mark in terms of our relationship, like behaviours which are kind of destructive in terms of communication, and me not being able to like check in on like the way that I can if I'm not stressed, yelling and whatnot, and those things have been not a problem. But when we're at like rock bottom, when we're so tired and the kids are bananas and there's work to be done, those parts of myself are showing up.
So it wasn't surprising, but that's kind of what you're learning, is that those traits tend to come up while you're under pressure with motherhood and juggling everything, which makes sense, right? And especially with sleep deprivation, right? That's a torture.
I think maybe it is surprising. I thought maybe I could keep them in check better. I think I am surprised at the fact that I just can't at times, and I'd like to, like with all the will in the world. I think
like for me, like the most surprising thing I found about myself is that which I don't like, as well as how petty I get about little things in the relationship, in terms of just like the little things, like if, you know, Brian goes out for an hour, I want to have an hour as well. It doesn't matter if I don't have a plan, I will go out of the house for an hour, you know, and it's so petty, like could just be down to the minute. I'm like looking at the time. And I think that about myself.
And it's good to talk like about that, the fact that, because I have that too, and it does feel petty, and like if you're thinking of a value, like it's not a nice virtue, but it just is there. And and I think is that is that me, or is a lot of people experiencing that, and kind of like what's that about? Like,
yeah, like I never knew that I had to be so what do you call it? There's a word that I'm kind of can't recall, but I just have to be so, it has to be just so even. Like, and it wasn't like that in our relationship before kids, like, you know.
oh yeah.
But suddenly kids came along, and then I was just, everything had to be just equal, which of course can't be done, especially when you're seeing kids. But yeah, definitely the pettiness and the resentment, which I was quite surprised. Like, whoa.
Yeah,
I didn't realize there's this dark side of me. And it came out when I had kids.
I know, and it reminds me of two things. Like, they said, like, I was finding isolation hard in like one of the weeks, and they said like you're in a tower of isolation, so you don't have your usual coping mechanisms, or some of them, of going out, distractions, seeing people. So you're having to face parts of yourself that you would avoid. And I found that really true for myself. You know, at times where I'd find distraction, it wasn't there, and I was kind of having a bit of a internal crisis. But also in those things that people don't talk about much, I remember Mother's Day last year, and I was thinking, you know, what would I like more than anything? And I was like, I just want to go to a hotel by myself. By myself. Yeah. Yeah, of course. And sleep and watch crazy TV and have nothing to do. And then I kind of thought, but Mother's Day, like I see mothers with their family and having breakfast in bed, or they go with their husband. I'm like, second checking myself. I'm like, but I just so much want to do that. So I kind of was like, am I normal?
Oh, totally. You're not the first person to say that. I would totally want to go into a hotel and just
self-isolation bubble for one.
Self-isolation, yeah. And you mentioned about isolation and how hard it's been for you, but I was just reflecting on how hard it is even more for parents, right? Because let's say if you didn't have kids, you have kind of more flexibility and time to do the self-care stuff, like going for a run or going, you know, cycling or whatnot. Whereas, you know, when we have kids and you're juggling childcare between you and your partner, you have to constantly negotiate of like who's doing what, who's doing the childcare, who's doing the work, who's doing the grocery. And I remembered, I think in the weekend, I got into this kind of like mindset, because literally we were just trying to bargain for 45 minutes of look at me just to go and like just go for a run. I'm like, are you serious? We're debating about half an hour versus 45 minutes. Like you know.
You could have made it an hour and 15 minutes. You could have had that time.
Yeah, but do you find that too, like with the isolation? I mean, currently we're in lockdown, so with the lockdown, like just the juggling of time and, you know, negotiating, the constant negotiation.
Yeah, totally. And you know, I think I sometimes devalue my position. You know, I'm complaining a lot in isolation, and it's really funny because that's not great for my bubble buddies, but and people say you shouldn't do that, but I just needed to. I just felt so much better to vent, and I said to Mark, you know, is it okay? And he's like, yeah, like sweet. But I just had to complain so much, and that's not typically me, but I just think it was the lack of time and space, and our world had been thrown up, and you know, Mark's working at home, and that's awesome because he pops out for morning tea and lunch and that, but I see what he's doing for work, and I think, and I devalue and minimize my problems because I'm just at home with the kids. So I don't know, it's been very interesting, that's for sure, and bit of a ride. But I get mad, like I've had this, so people were speaking about, like, my brother lives in a small apartment with his new wife, and my other siblings were like, wouldn't that be awful? And I'm like, oh no sympathy, nah, like, come here with 2 little kids and you can't take them anywhere, like, back to me, excuse me. And then Mark was talking to friends on Zoom, and someone said the same thing, imagine being in a little apartment and they all had kids, and they're like, who cares, like, kids, that's the issue. So that thing about kind of like the emotions, just getting mad, and like if I don't feel I have the validation for how difficult it is or something. I don't know.
Yeah. And I think that's important to kind of acknowledge and validate like what we're going through together. Like I think there's been a lot of talk about, you know, obviously the reason why we need to do the lockdown, right? But I think there's also a need to talk about the fact that we've lost a lot as well. We've lost, you know, freedom. We've lost our connection. We've lost our village. People have lost their jobs. And with that loss, that, you know, again, there's that grieving process, right? And it's okay and it's normal to feel angry, right? It's okay. But when we don't talk about it, that's when we tend to internalize it, right? And then think that maybe it's me.
Totally.
Why am I being so ungrateful? You know.
And like you say, I just noticed that at the beginning, you know, with the shock and the denial and all the memes, and it was all a big joke, and this is like a whole new world, and then like we kind of move on through the stages of grief and it changes. But I have to say, with the alert level 3 today, I felt lost. I thought things aren't really going to change much in a day-to-day life, and I have no time frame on it. It was like how you push through to get the kids to bed and you're like, oh, I just have to get through that part. I was kind of like, okay, we just got to get through level 4, and then now, you know, things will continue to be quite different with not too much of a direction yet about how long that will be the case. So, and as you say, you sort of have some judgment about your thoughts and feelings if you're healthy and if you have a job. So there's definitely some dismissing of negative emotions, I think, for a lot of people, and definitely for myself.
Yeah, definitely. And in terms of being a psychologist, here's another question that might be a curveball.
I'll just take a drink.
Yeah. So you were a child psychologist for a long time before, well, you're still a child psychologist, but what do you think you would have done things differently in terms of parenting if you weren't a psychologist?
Oh yeah. You know,
like what?
Well, it's that thing, you can't take the psychologist out of you, right? And I remember in our training years ago, they said, you're going to be a neurotic parent because you know too much, you know, like this is going to change you. You're absolutely Barney if you think that you can do all these degrees and you know, that's not going to implicate the way that you parent for better and for worse. So, look, I mean, and I always think how Courtney Love's mum is a psychologist. That didn't go well. No. So, I mean, I'm a different person. Like, I've had to do so much therapy, like especially in doing those, you know, infant mental health and reflective functioning and being involved in DADS and the subconscious and the attachment stuff. I mean, I ripped myself apart and come back together, and that hurts because you don't know in the journey you're going on until you get there and things smack you in the face, that's for sure. But that's like any therapy process. So people that have been through therapy would have had that experience. So, I mean, long story short, I'd be a very different parent for better and for worse, potentially, if I wasn't a child psychologist. I think there's the good and the bad. This is just a crude answer to a very big question.
That's just a loaded question because I'm just reflecting on that question myself, and I'm like, I don't even know. Just want to hear what you have to say.
No, it's certainly an interesting one, but and blind spots. I mean, I would have had different blind spots. Like, you know, I am going to have blind spots, which you know, is a jazzed up psych term for doing stuff wrong. And having limited awareness about it, or you know, reacting rather than, you know, responding. So yeah, it would have been different in some parts, same in the other parts. And as I say, like, there have been some gems in terms of the self-development that I have been through.
Yeah.
And, you know, oh God, this could go on, but I think there's a huge amount of work I've done that has had a positive benefit on my intimate relationship, my marriage, and then the secondary impacts for that are for the kids. Because yeah, huge.
And how do you think you want to be remembered by Lily and Zachy as a mom?
I think about that, and I just think this is so basic, just fun. I have this fascination with how fun young people are and how they're just into everything and just their thirst for life, and that they see so much, you know, like for the first time, and it's interesting, and they have like the libido and the energy. And you know, I remember in one job, you know, there was like, we'd say quite often people go about things in different ways, and there's you know, some people like to do things the right way, some people like to do things, you know, the safe way, some people like to do things like break the rules, and some people just like to do things the fun way. And that was even what Tuti was about. It's like, we have to do nappies, like how can we have some fun with it? Or, you know, just, I guess just it comes back to like the creativity and the chaos that is out there in life. And you know, I get a real kind of kick out of when I'm with my family or my friends and we have so much fun. And those moments are probably like the most memorable to me. So yeah, I guess that would be something that comes to mind as really cool if that was part of their memories
of just having fun.
Yeah, when possible, not always an option, but that there's the potential with mum to have fun. And I mean, like, but your mum's usually a dag and you don't want to hang out with her, so.
But you are such a fun mom, though. You always do lots of fun things with the kids.
Well, they're fun, you know, and they bring that out in you as well, which is cool. I mean, not so much, they're still pretty little, but like Lily's starting to, you know, say the funny things and whatnot. So yeah, they put it out there for you to jump on.
Yeah, definitely. I'm definitely enjoying this stage now more than when they were just like newborns, right? Because now they're just interacting and they've got their own little personality and
yeah, they do. They're looking like totally big girls now.
Yeah. And even when they're quite destructive, I find it still quite funny.
Yeah.
Or, you know, reinforcement of that kind of behavior. But
yeah, totally. But just that curiosity, like where are we going with that? Like what's going on there?
Yeah. And I think just being on that level, just being mindful and kind of seeing the world through their eyes allow us to be more present. And I think that's what I appreciate with having kids, is that the simple stuff, which you know, like going to the playground or just kind of, you know, seeing them going down a slide for the first time, and it's so cool, you know, like, and it's just reliving that experience again, but from that fresh perspective. And I think that's what I really enjoy about it.
Oh yeah, that's a key thing, like for me as well. You like you literally rediscover the world again, like and just the memories that come back with that, you know, as like, I just think as adults we get filtered into life and the machine and
paying the bills.
Yeah. And like you say, you can kind of like can play and back to basics and stuff.
Times with the kids. Cool. Thank you so much for your time, Megan.
Thank you. It was an honor. Thank you for inviting me.
It's so much fun. And as a thank you, I will deliver this to you contactless. It's the Generosity Coffee. You've been to it, right?
God, yes.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have. We are gonna love that.
because I
Thank
you love
you.
coffee. And they're still open. They're delivering coffee to everyone.
Oh, awesome. I didn't know
Yeah,
that. That's
yeah.
very good to know.
I thought it's really cool that because I do love going to the cafe.
Yeah, that's so nice.
Opposite Birkenhead Library. But
Yeah,
it's cool that they actually what's it, roast? Yeah, they do roast their own coffee and
yeah,
ground it and everything. And I think every time you buy a cup of coffee and their coffee, then they donate a certain portion to charities, like Kids Can and the Kaipatiki Trust. So it's a really
yeah.
cool company. And yeah,
They
I
are
know you love
they
your
are
coffee.
really nice.
Yeah.
And if anyone needs somewhere to work, they're really friendly if you want to go and do work there too.
Yeah, I think they do training for like barista training or
Yeah,
something.
yeah. But even like I go there with my computer, and they're always so happy for you to,
Oh, you mean like for people
time.
to work in the cafe?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's
Yeah.
great. Thank you. You really didn't have to, but we'll thoroughly enjoy it.
You'll get it soon. So thank you so much
Yeah.
again.
Thank you. Have a good night. I'll speak to you soon.
Good night.
See
Bye.
ya.